All right, back on the Young Turks. So we've been having budget talks with Joe Biden and the Republicans, and they've been trying to get to a deal so they can raise the debt ceiling. Republicans are demanding that they cut in spending as much as they're going to raise in the debt ceiling. Apparently, that number is in the ballpark of $2 trillion. They want to raise it by that much, $2.4 trillion sometimes they say. And apparently, we already have that much in spending cuts, or we're near it, right? And we're now getting to the stage where we talk about the tax increases. So because we need to look at the revenue side. And look at what the Republicans did. Eric Cantor today walked out. He's like, nope, not doing it. But wait a minute, what happened? I thought we were going to do the spending cuts and then we're going to get to the tax increases. He's like, no, I'll just take the spending cuts. Otherwise, I'm goner. Okay? And he walks out. Now, there's a little backstory to this. He doesn't want to sign on to any tax increases because he thinks it'll hurt him politically with the Tea Party and everybody else. John Boehner didn't want to take responsibility for it. That's why he appointed Eric Cantor, his number 2 guy, to take that bullet. And Eric Cantor now turns around and goes, I'm not taking that bullet. I'll walk out. Now I leave it up to Boehner and Obama. Let them take the bullet, right? So there's a little internal GOP politics going on there. But then once Cantor walks out, Senator Kyle, the representative of the Republicans in the Senate, he walks out. So now, think about this strategically and how stupid the Democrats are. Because they already gave all the spending cuts. They already agreed to all the spending cuts. And now when it comes to the tax part of it, the Republicans are like, well, we don't have to give you that. You already agreed to the spending cuts. Of course, of course, of course. No, but they can't be this bad. We've talked about it a million times. Nobody could be that stupid. In negotiations, who gives the other side everything they want and then says, all right, now be a good guy and give me the rest? What? If you were in business world, you'd be immediately fired. You're the world's worst negotiator. You're like the anti-price line. You come in, you give the highest bid, and then at the end go, oh my God, what happened? Why did I get a bad deal? Yeah, because you gave the highest bid. You're supposed to give the lowest bid. So that's not the part that is interesting. That's to be expected. This is the games that we exactly knew were coming, right? Because Democrats want to lose. That's why they set it up this way. It's all kabuki theater. It's all a game that Washington is playing on us. But the part that really grates on me is this next part. So now that the Republicans have walked out, Max Baucus, who was the guy pretending to protect Medicare for the Democrats. And as I heard that back in the day, I was like, Max Baucus, corporate Max Baucus is the guy protecting Medicare? And I could have told you then. You know what that means? That means at the last moment, Max Baucus is going to go, oh, I was protecting it all along, but you know what? We got to make a deal. All right, Medicare. And that moment is today. So he says, all right, since they walked out, in order to get the extra taxes and to increase revenue, we'll give you Medicare cuts. So what happened in the spending cuts? What happened to $2 trillion in spending cuts? So those don't count at all. No, nobody's that stupid. No way, no how. I'm pounding the gavel, okay? Nobody's that dumb. Nobody's that bad a negotiator. The Democrats are throwing the game. They're throwing it on purpose. They meant to do this all along. They meant to do the Medicare cuts. And you know, Mark Warner, Senator, one of the Democratic senators negotiating with the Republicans in a separate group, is saying we're going to do lowering corporate taxes. They're going to. They're going to take away some loopholes, some subsidies, some deductions that raise revenue, and then they're going to lower tax rates, and they're going to cut Medicare anyway. They're going to do all of that because Washington already agreed to it. Because why? The rich and the powerful agreed to it. They don't give a damn what you think. Cutting Medicare, it does disastrously in the polls. Who cares, right? Raising taxes on the rich is an incredibly high rate. For raising taxes on millionaires is at 84% approval. You think they're going to do that? They're not going to do it. They might even lower taxes on them because it's not a democracy anymore. They've stolen our government. So the Democrats are just there to play the good cop as the Republicans play the bad cop. And they're like, oh my God, did we give away $2 trillion in spending cuts? Oh, and now the negotiations begin? Oh, we didn't see that coming. I am repulsed by the Democrats. Repulsed. So they say, don't worry. The Medicare cuts are not coming from the beneficiary side. They're coming from the provider side. So we will be cutting, some money that the doctors, the hospitals are getting, the medical equipment makers, and maybe even the drug makers. Look, if you cut the money that the drug companies are getting, great. Okay, I'm not an unreasonable guy. That money's wasted anyway. Okay, and if it doesn't hurt the beneficiaries, great, no problem, right? And by the way, those drug companies must have screwed over the administration because they had a rock-solid deal to get that health care law passed. And there was no way the administration was going to go back on that. But somehow now all of a sudden, this is the third time I've heard Democrats talking about maybe actually negotiating with drug companies to get better deals. That must mean that that those drug companies did not hold up their end of the bargain. Okay? Okay. And boy, I'm really surprised. I didn't see that coming, right? So, in the end, we are now starting fresh. After giving away approximately $2 trillion in spending cuts, none of that counted. Okay, now have you seen this movie before? I've seen it before. You remember when President Obama started the negotiations with the Republicans last time around on spending cuts, and he gave away $40 billion from his budget, and then it didn't count, and then nobody talked about it anymore, and then they started anew, and then he gave away another $38 billion, and $8 billion more than the Republicans originally requested? Remember when they did the negotiations in the lame duck session, and what happened? President Obama gave away the tax cuts to the rich to pass the easiest laws in the history of mankind, the START Treaty. The Republicans pretend to be against the START Treaty. Everybody's in favor of the START Treaty. It's like saying, oh yeah, if you don't agree to those tax cuts for the rich, I won't agree to breathe. Ooh. And then Obama's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? The guy says he won't breathe. He's turning blue in the face. No, I got to give him the tax cuts. It's a rigged game. They meant to do it all along. Look at this. Look at this guy, Obama, right? When they asked him about it after that tax cut deal, where he got rooked for the millionth time in a row, and somebody asked him, I think it was Ambinder from Atlantic. Anyway, they asked him, hey, you did this deal, but isn't that going to set the stage for you getting rooked every time, right? Especially as the debt ceiling is coming up? Great question. Perfect question, right? Here was President Obama's answer. Look, here's my expectation, and I'll take John Boehner at his word, that nobody, Democrat or Republican, is willing to see the full faith and credit of the United States government collapse. That would not be a good thing to happen. I'll take John Boehner at his word that they're just going to raise the debt ceiling because they want what's good for the country. No, seriously, Obama supporters, I'm asking you, is your man that naive? And I'm being very polite there. Is he that naive? Is he that gullible? That after 2 years in office, that he thinks Boehner's just going to keep his word and that he's going to raise the debt ceiling with no problem, that he's not going to ask for concessions, and that we're not going to go through this again. So you tell me, is he that gullible? I hope he is, because the other answer is he snickered after the press conference. Like, wait till I cut Medicare and cut taxes on corporations again with the Republicans. It's going to be great. I said I could take John Boehner at his word. Well, I can, because we made a secret deal where we're going to give the rich and the powerful everything they want. By the way, the Washington media is so goofy in so many ways. They did the golf summit. I didn't even bother mentioning it to you. So-called golf summit where Obama and Boehner went to go play golf, and they were supposed to work things out. The talking point in Washington was that, well, that's good because it'll set up a cordial relationship, and that Obama's loosening up Boehner so that Boehner will then give him more concessions. Come on, man. You can't do it, man. You can't cover politics and be that naive. You just can't do it. But they all believe it. I mean, when you get a talking point coming out of Washington, it's amazing how much people believe it. I'm like, really? Boehner's going to be like, oh, I played golf with Obama. What do you need? Yeah, I'll give it to you. No, what did they do instead? Right after the golf summit, they walked out on the negotiations and said, we got our spending cuts. Now piss off. No, it's hopeless, man. The Democrats are the worst. Worst. Because they're lying to you worse. Because the Republicans, they don't lie that much. They just come out and say, yeah. We want to cut taxes to the bone for the rich. We're the bad guys. Right? We're bad cop. That's easy. But on the black hats, screw the middle class, give it all to the corporations. Easy. Democrats are like, oh, dude, I'm on your side, man. Oh, yeah, they're rich? Oh, yeah, they're getting away with things. Yeah. I'm going to raise taxes on them. We're going to lower the taxes, suckers. See why I have more disdain for the Democrats? Okay. By the way, all right, let's give a little bit of credit to Tom Harkin, who's mostly a good guy, well, oftentimes very frustrating. I shouldn't bother giving credit to any of these guys. There's only one guy at this point I give credit to, Bernie Sanders. Pete DeFazio is a good guy. Who's actually on the MSNBC show today, too. A lot of people think he's, if not the most progressive person left in Congress, one of the most progressive. Okay, the rest of them, Anyway, Tom Harkin holds a hearing on how the American middle class is struggling. Okay, good. At least somebody's holding the hearing, right? Of course, nobody cares. Nobody covered it. Middle class. Middle class. Good one, Harkin. Okay. But something came out of it that I found interesting. Vice President Joe Biden's former economist and advisor, Jared Bernstein, made note of these facts. Median family income has actually grown since 1979. Hey, good news. Now, the bottom 20%, right, their income has actually gone way down since that time. So 1979 is about the time period we always talk about. That's the main turning point after corporate power, Ronald Reagan, et cetera, right? So bottom fifth of the country, they drop 30%, their income does. But median income goes up 11%. So now over a 30-year time period, 11% sucks, right? Just sucks. It's nearly flat, right? But hey, it went up a little tiny bit. Now you want to know how much it went up for the top 1%? It went up 80%. Okay, now by the way, I was surprised at how little that was, because in some stretches it went up 200-300%, right? So, okay, wow, all right, 80%. I in fact think he got it wrong because I've seen higher numbers before. But even let's assume that's right. 8-to-1 ratio, average guy to the top 1% over the last 30 years. Gee, I wonder where the money's going. Can you guys figure out where the money's going? All right. By the way, that's more important point there. Here, let me do it in the context of this other story that I was going to do actually, because this goes to the middle class. 9 out of 10 work, and it goes to the whole economy. It goes to where we're going as a country. 9 out of 10 American workers right now, according to a survey by American Pulse, are not expecting salary increases in the next year, and they're worried about rising costs of basic necessities, right? But they're like, well, we're not going to get any extra money. By the way, how are corporations doing overall since the pre-recession levels, like when they were really healthy? Well, since the recession, they've actually gone up 22%, profits have, for corporations. So they're doing awesome. How are we doing? Well, you know how we're doing, right? So 9 out of 10 think that they're not going to get any raise at all under any circumstances. 70% of those said that they plan on changing their habits to buy only necessities going forward. Nearly half of America, in a different poll done by CNN, say that the U.S. is nearing the second Great Depression. All right. I get several conclusions out of this. Number one, Obama's going to lose. Okay. Again, not pounding the gavel, a lot can happen. But if 7 out of 10 people in the country are changing their habits so that they're only spending money on bare necessities like food and shelter, that's a terrible sign for the economy. And it's a terrible sign for how they're going to vote. But you think the economy is going to improve with 7 out of 10 scared to death they're barely going to be able to cover necessities? And second point I get out of it is more important. Look, Robert Reich is right, okay? If you don't have a healthy middle class, you don't have people to buy. Do you know that 70% of our GDP is connected to consumer purchasing? If 70% of our GDP is connected to consumer purchasing and we're not doing any consumer purchasing, you think the economy is going to improve? Of course it's not going to improve. You know, the Republicans say, hey, you know what? For example, if we just did a tax holiday and we repatriated the money that the corporations have outside the U.S. and we brought them in at a 5% tax rate instead of 35%, well, then the companies would have more confidence and they'd have more money, and then they would invest it in, and then they would create jobs. That's an incontrovertible lie, right? You know why? Companies already have about $2 trillion in cash that they're sitting on and will not invest. Why won't they invest it? Because they think nobody has any money to buy. That's why they're not creating new jobs. That's why the economy is not improving. What we've done, and as I look at this story, I think the main takeaway from it is the greed of the rich and powerful in this country has strangled our economy because they sucked the money up to the top. They sucked it up to the top. At least 80% gains for the top 1%, right? And they took all that money, and corporations have paid less and less taxes over the last 50, 60 years. We've paid more and more taxes as a percentage of federal revenue, the average man, payroll tax, personal income tax, etc. So they won't pay the taxes. They make more money. We make less money. And in the end, what happened? What happened is we don't have a middle class that can buy anything. So then our economy is a disaster. But these corporations are not American corporations. They're multinational corporations. So they've moved on. They're going to China, and they're going to the rest of the world. They're going to India, etc., and they're making money over there. And they're getting the new middle class of China to buy. And they've basically left us to die. Now, to go back into politics, do you think the Obama administration understands any of this? Have they addressed any of this? My sense of it is none at all. So what are they doing to get more money to the middle class as opposed to the very rich so that the economy can improve, so that unemployment numbers can go down, so that at the very least, even if you're just craving that the president can get reelected? Nope. See, that's why I don't think that it's just that they have made a deal with the Republicans and they're playing patty cake secretly, because this doesn't help them politically. I think that they are actually incredibly bad politicians and, have intelligence issues. I mean, I'm putting it as politely as I can, but seriously, so you're trying to get reelected as president. Unemployment's at 9.1%. Carl Rove, I told you earlier, wrote the Wall Street Journal editorial. He's rubbing it in, he's laughing. He's like, how are you going to get elected at 9.1%? You said by this time that you'd have to be at 6.8% unemployment. Because they believed it. They would have never said that in public if they didn't believe it, right? Because if it doesn't go to that, they get screwed. And everybody throws that in their face like Rove is doing now. They thought that giving all the money to the rich and to the bankers was going to work. And who cares about the middle class? They don't need the money. Or we just give it to the bankers and to the top companies and they'll create jobs. Well, that was a Republican idea. And that idea, they never believed in the first place. They just wanted you to do it so that the rich would get richer. And the Democrats apparently were the only jackasses who believed it. And that's what Obama and Geithner and Larry Summers did. And now guess what? The banks and the corporations, they took it and they put it in their pockets. Now we have a terrible economy and it's not going to improve. Certainly not by the election time. And the president's going to lose. Because he's a terrible politician and he's terrible on policy. Can I get stronger? Would you like me to get stronger? I did Afghanistan, right? I did it yesterday on the MSNBC. I did it today on MSNBC. And there's some Obama bots, and then they come out and they attack and they say, how dare you say anything about the president? So, again, let me ask the usual question. What do you want me to do? Lie to you? So do you want me to say that removing 10,000 people from Afghanistan, 10,000 troops by the end of the year, 33,000 by the end of 2012, that is a bold strategy? No, that was the weakest possible strategy. The weakest possible withdrawal. So what do you want me to say? Oh, no, Obama, he's great. Oh, yeah, boy, was he fantastic in Afghanistan. He withdrew as much as he possibly could. Nonsense. By the end, it was a perfect microcosm yesterday. We showed you the graph. By the end of Obama's term, Mr. I'm going to get out of this war and the tide of war is receding, doubled the number of troops in Afghanistan from the time that he was in office. And for what? And then he's taking heat today from Republicans. They're like, how dare you? John McCain says he'd like to stay forever. Of course he would. Tim Pawlenty, what a loser that guy is. I'm sorry I mentioned his name. Who cares what he said? Okay, but then Petraeus and Mullen come out. And they say, they basically disagreed with President Obama. They say that openly. Well, look, if I'm the president, man, I don't know, maybe I'd be President Walnuts, right? Maybe it's because I'm from New Jersey. I was calling Governor Christie Governor Walnuts after Paulie Walnuts, where he's telling people to, what business is it of yours? Man, who knows? Maybe I'd be way too over the top. But my commanders coming and talking publicly about how they disagree with me, I would not be tolerated. Because we have a system of government where we have civilian leadership. I care very much what the generals think. I want to get their advice and counsel, and then they're done, and they're free to leave the goddamn room. I'm not interested in what you agree with or disagree with in overall strategy and what we're going to do in terms of the politics of the situation, or much more importantly, the policy of the situation. These people elected me to do something, to be their leader, to be their representative. I'm not going to take orders from a general. The only thing generals want is more and more war. So I'm supposed to listen to a general? So, Mullen and Petraeus say, well, it's a little risky. I would have kept all the troops in there until 2014. Well, yeah, of course you would keep all the troops in there forever. even if I didn't question your motives, which I do, I think you're all going to get rich at some point working for defense contractors. There, I said it. I question their motives, okay? But even if I didn't, look, you're military guys. All you want is war. You want glory in war. I am General Petraeus. I saved Iraq. I saved Afghanistan. I stayed there for 38 years saving them as I kept killing them over and over. I'm interested in your expertise. I'm not interested in your opinion outside of that. You think President Obama is going to say anything like that? All right, man, I got to wrap it up before I get more and more angry. All right, let me take a break and come back.
No, nigga, I'm doing 100 on the highway. So if you do the speed limit, get the fuck out of my way.
Back on the air, Cenk, what's up?
No.
Okay. You know, somebody wrote in today saying, I love your show. You're strong, progressive, on MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
But how the hell do you say your name, right? So it's a good point. Maybe I should start every show like, because I say, good evening, everybody. I'm Cenk Uygur, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should say like, good evening, everybody. I'm Cenk Uygur. What do you think?
That's probably a bad idea.
Okay, I hear you. All right, I try. All right, what's next?
All right. This story will blow your mind. Are you ready?
I am ready to have my mind explode.
Okay, Lucas found this great article written by Think Progress. He sent it my way. And it has to do with a study that was done by the Justice Policy Institute. And they looked at private prisons just to, examine how much private prisons are spending on lobbying and how much money they make off of their business, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, it's unsurprising that they spend millions of dollars on lobbying, especially when it comes to direct campaign contributions, networking, lobbying. Just to give you an example, they spent over $835,000 to federal candidates and over $6 million to state candidates.
But Anna, having spent that money on politicians, I'm sure it had no effect because politicians make decisions based on principles and not campaign contributions. So you're not about to tell me that private prisons have actually increased the number of people that are in those prisons and hence making more money. That didn't happen, did it?
Of course it happened.
Really?
I mean, everything is bought in the United States, right? That's what this whole show is about.
Right.
But what's incredible is when you really look at the numbers and the amount of people who are in prison now compared to just a few years ago, it blows your mind and it's angering because what they're doing is when they're lobbying, they're asking politicians to basically put people away in jail for longer and for small offenses. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they can make money off of it. So let me give you an example. Okay, the total number of people in prison increased less than 16% since 1997. Okay. Total number of people in prison, right? However, when it comes to federal private prison, that number increased 120%.
Now, come on, think about that, come on. Okay, so private prisons somehow, magically, got 120% increase in the number of people they're taking in so they can make more money. And by the way, if they hadn't gotten that increase, the 16% number overall would have been lower.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're driving up the number for the whole country. Gee, I wonder how that happened. Could anybody in their right mind think that's a coincidence? That they just happen to spend all the money on these politicians and on laws that they push for that we're going to tell you about in a second. And they just coincidentally, that's what happened. And then all of a sudden they got more prisoners, and then they made more money. They made billions. Just a couple of companies alone made around, $3 billion? Okay, well, funny how our system works. But don't worry, the politicians are principled, and they would never do anything for campaign contributions.
This is the scariest story because, of course, so private prisons, they're like businesses. Of course they want to, make as much money as possible. But think about how that affects you as a citizen of the United States, okay? They're looking to put people away for minor offenses. Okay, for anything. That's why this war on drugs continues. It's because it's big business for these private jails, for these private prisons. So who knows what's next? Now all of a sudden you videotape a police officer and they're thinking about putting you away in jail.
Right. Let me give you a couple of examples, right? First of all, two private prisons alone, Corrections Corporation of America and GEO Group just last year made $2.9 billion. Now, that's a lot of money on the line. So that's why they turn around and spend all of those millions buying those politicians, because as you can tell, they get more revenue that way. But what do they push for when they ask the politicians, right? Many different things. Hey, you got to get tougher on crime. You got to get tougher on drugs, right? Oh, you should do longer sentences, no question, longer sentences, and arrest more people. So that's obvious, right? And they definitely push for that, and we see examples of that in this article. But the other thing that they pushed for example, in Arizona, was the new immigration law. So that all of a sudden, all Latinos are suspect, and then all of a sudden, there'll be many more arrests. And look at that. The private prisons have more prisoners. What a wonderful coincidence. And this is how we become a police state, where we privatize our prisons, and then they buy our politicians, and they have the motivation to arrest us all, okay? I mean, let alone the warrantless wiretapping that's happening, let alone all the spying that they're doing on United States citizens. But now they have a profit motive behind putting us in prison, right or wrong. Now, I read this story and I thought, no, it's hopeless. Like, there's got to be a political revolution. There's no way around it. Because you can't undo this. Because once that virus gets in there, right, what are you going to do?
I mean, they made $3 billion last year alone. Okay, they're profiting big time. So you're right. It's unstoppable.
It's unstoppable because here's what somebody's not going to give up: $3 billion. Okay, so who's going to pass a law saying we can't have private prisons anymore and shut down those companies? They will spend every dime they have lobbying and buying politicians. And you know how easy it is to buy a politician. How are you going to find enough clean politicians to turn around on this one issue alone and say no more private prisons? No, instead we're going to get more and more private prisons. In fact, in Florida, the thing that they're lobbying hardest on is to convert the entire state into a private prison system. Okay? And then the virus grows and it gets more powerful. The more powerful they get, the more money they have, the more politicians they buy, and the bigger they get, right? And let's say miraculously you fought incredibly hard, you turned the focus of the whole country on this issue, which you would never be able to do. It's a relatively minor issue given everything else that's going on in the country. But you did it, you won, and you wiped out these prisons. All right, now there are 100 other viruses out there of private corporations abusing our system to get advantage for themselves and screwing over citizens of this country. How are you going to beat all those back? There's only one answer. Corporations are not human beings. They do not have any rights. They do not have any of the rights of human beings in the United States Constitution. They do not have freedom of speech rights. They cannot spend a dime on our politicians. Okay? And if they are caught spending a dime on our politicians, the CEO gets arrested. Okay? Now, all of a sudden, well, then they can't lobby the politicians. And then we're back in the ballgame on every issue. There's no other way to kill the virus. Okay? You got to go to the heart. Otherwise, we're going to lose on every issue. And then, by the way, we are by far and away the country that imprisons the greatest percentage of our population. Okay? I think except North Korea. Okay? But we're nip and tuck, I believe. Okay? I got to look into it.
That's really depressing.
Now, as this virus grows of private prisons, you think it's going to get better? No way. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And as long as this exists, by the way, one other ramification of this that's obvious that we've already talked about a little bit, we're never going to end the drug war.
No, we're not. Of course
never going to end it with private prisons.
I mean, private contractors are making money off of it. Private prisons are making money off of it. It's too lucrative for them. There's no way in hell we're going to get rid of the
Yeah, you know, I knew the alcohol company thing was minor. I knew it. I knew it in my bones. I think we talked about it on air. And the defense contractor is making money on fighting the war on drugs in Central American countries and here, and then the private prisons that make, bank on all these people who get arrested for minor possession of drugs, etc. They're never going to let go of those billions of dollars that they're getting. So that's your country. There is no other answer, man. You need to go after the very heart of corporate America, multinational corporations. You don't kill off corporations. I'm not against corporations, period. I'm against laws that give them special rights that destroy our democracy. That's what you got to go after. Otherwise, we're screwed.
All right, politicians in North Carolina are thinking of paying victims of sterilization $20,000 each. right after World War II, and even before World War II, there was a whole eugenics program here in the United States. And what they would do is they would sterilize people that they found menaces to society. Okay, people that they felt were incompetent, wouldn't be able to raise children, people that they thought were promiscuous, mostly women and mostly black people. Let's keep it real.
Yeah, what an unbelievable coincidence. I didn't see that coming.
And what's interesting about this is there were 60,000 women in 32 states that were sterilized from the 1920s to the 1970s. Okay, a large chunk happened after World War II. Isn't that what Hitler did?
You know, on a much grander scale, obviously,
Right.
and a much more dire
ideology is
consequence,
the
but the
same.
ideology is the same. And you know, the thing is, you know, people always say like, yeah, but you know, racism and stuff, ancient history. It went into the 1970s that it wasn't just mild racism. They were going and you know, sterilizing predominantly black women because you know, they're promiscuous and we don't want their kind having kids.
We have an example for you guys. CBS News did a really great video featuring a woman by the name of Elaine Riddick. And when she was 14 years old, she was raped and she got pregnant as a result. She gave birth to the baby, and right after she gave birth, she got sterilized because they said that she was promiscuous. Okay? Video explains more. Let's watch.
Say hello.
At 57, Elaine Riddick has a house full of godchildren, great-nieces, and nephews, but only one child of her own, a son. When she was 14, Riddick was raped. The day she gave birth, doctors sterilized her on orders from the state of North Carolina. Her illiterate grandmother signed the sterilization papers with an X.
I've always been able to take care of myself. I've never been promiscuous. So how can people use these things to describe a child that had been abandoned or that had been raped by the neighbor and then again raped by the state of North Carolina?
What happened to Elaine Riddick in North Carolina happened to more than 60,000 people in 32 states from the early 1900s to the 1970s.
The people who were the focus of this kind of movement were people who were the dispossessed of society. They were poor people, and in some cases, simply people of color.
They slandered me.
North Carolina is the first state to consider making amends with a cash payment, $20,000 for each victim.
It sounds to me like you're still
Hurt. I am devastated. I am mad. I am mad. And I'm tired of hiding my feelings, and I want everybody to know who should pay.
A decision on compensation could come sometime next year, but Scott, lawmakers would still have to approve the funding, $69 million to pay the victims.
And news reports are that with the Republicans in North Carolina, the chance of that passing is incredibly small. So, we sterilized you, so what? Go pound sand, okay? So, by the way, you know, she's still alive. It happened to her, right? And it would happen as late as the 1970s. You know who else is still alive? The people who did it to her.
Right.
The people who made the decision that a 14-year-old girl who was raped was too promiscuous.
You know, I love that you mentioned that because those people genuinely thought that they were doing society good. Like, they didn't do it thinking, oh yeah, let's screw these people over. They actually thought, look, these people aren't competent. They can't have children. Okay, we can't allow them to parent. So we're going to make society a better place. We're going to make their lives easier by taking away their right to have children. Like, they genuinely thought that. They talked themselves into thinking that. You know, some of them were interviewed by the Associated Press, and you read their comments, and you're just like, oh my God, they really thought that they were helping society.
No, I understand that, but they also thought, well, we're helping society because, I mean, these black people, of course they can't take care of the babies and stuff, and you know how black people are, they're promiscuous. At the age of 14, how in the world was she promiscuous? I just can't get over it because she was raped. I mean, but that person making that decision, and he might have thought that he's helping this black woman because she obviously is not as capable as white people or whatever, but is obviously racist, okay? Now, this isn't just about race. It's a much more important issue in a sense is how rich people viewed poor people, right? Like how poor people can't take care of babies. They're incompetents and they're promiscuous. You know how poor people are. And all that race and poverty, et cetera, all that mixed in, especially in places like North Carolina. Look, part of the reason I'm telling you this is it's an outrage that these people are not going to get any compensation, anything, any acknowledgement, really, right? The other part of it is, sometimes we're like, I'm surprised by the overt racism that I see in this country, right? And I think like, whoa, how can anybody think that, right? But the guys who are still around who made decisions like that, of course they think that way. And, you know, so racism in this country isn't something that's, you know, ancient history. It's unfortunately part of the fabric of this country in some ways. Has it gotten better? Of course it has, right? But at the same time, it's still in there, you know, from varying degrees. And unfortunately, in the older generations, I mean, they lived in a different social context. Again, I'm trying to be fair to them, right? And they lived in a context where racism was rampant. So they thought it was perfectly normal, right? And in their own twisted minds, they thought they were helping these people, for example, right? But they're still out there.
They are. By the way, just to mention, in that report, they talked about how 60,000 people were sterilized within 32 states. North Carolina is the only state that's even brought this type of legislation up. And, you know, even though the chances of it passing are slim, I think that it's important for this story to even come up and for legislators in the state to even consider it. I mean, I really want it to pass. I think that they deserve compensation. But what happened to the other 31 states?
Yeah, well, apparently nobody gives a damn. One last thing on this. You know, I was reading a book on Rush Limbaugh's life, and it was an interesting book for a couple of different reasons. The guy who wrote it wound up being incredibly pro-Rush Limbaugh, so it was kind of weird, you know, but because I was hoping for some sort of objectivity. I didn't expect a book where they're like, oh, Rush Limbaugh's evil and he does this. No, like how did he grow up, what happened? But at least the part where he wrote about how he grew up was interesting and it gave you some insight into Rush, etc., right? And he said, and when Rush is challenged, for example, at one point about being, you know, racist or not racist, et cetera. Even when he's buying the NFL, that was a huge issue. When he was trying to buy a team in the NFL, I should say. And he says, what are you talking about? When we grew up, our maid was black, and she was like part of the family. We were so nice to her. No, but look, I tell you that so you get a sense of the mindset, right? Like in their mind, they're like, we were nice to the black maid. What more do you want from us, right? So to them, that's it. That's not being racist, right? And so the audience of Rush Limbaugh is predominantly over the age of 65. The audience of Fox News is predominantly over the age of 65. Bill O'Reilly's average age of the viewer is 71 years old.
Jeez.
That's it. Every time I am blown away by that number. Every time, okay? Average age is 71. That means half of them are above 71, okay? So at least. Now, when you think about people who made decisions like this in the 1970s, what happened to them? They were watching Fox News and listening to Rush Limbaugh. Okay. Now, I know it's generalizations and gross generalizations, and of course it's not all the Fox viewers, of course it's not all the Rush listeners, et cetera, et cetera. And just because you're older doesn't mean that you did this to people in North Carolina. Don't get me wrong, right? And we have plenty of people above the age of 65 who watch and listen to us. But I think for the younger generation, maybe I'm naive and everybody already knows this, but I think for the younger generation, it's good to realize where some of that comes from. Right?
Yeah.
That's all.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we have criminals that make terrible decisions.